Hi, my name is Melissa Townsend Crow, or Lisa Crow, and today I'm going to tell you a Norwegian fairy tale called Tatterhood. Tatterhood was adapted by Lisa Hunt for her book Once Upon a Time, which accompanies the fairy tale Tarot. The reason I liked this fairy tale was because, first of all, the character reminds me of my daughter, and second of all, it was very empowering. The protagonist, Tatterhood, is a princess, but she doesn't sleep through the best part of the story, and she doesn't wait around to be rescued. So, let's begin. There once was a queen who made very good decisions and was very loved by her people. And she was very blessed with almost anything she could possibly want, except for one thing. She desperately wanted a child of her own. And so time passed and no child came. So the queen built a beautiful garden outside of her window, and she invited all the children of her royal court to come and play there. And she would stand by her window and watch the children play and hear them laughing happily, and it helped a little. But then one day the queen saw a beggar child playing amongst the royal court children. Well, this simply wouldn't do. So she called out to the girl, "You there, be gone! This garden is only for royal children." The girl turned around and looked at her with her strange eyes. And she told the queen, "If you knew who my mother was, you would be kinder to me. My mother is a powerful fairy, and she can give you whatever you want, even your heart's desire." Of course, the queen immediately became gentler with the girl and sent her to bring her mother to the palace right away. The girl returned with her mother, and the queen begged the fairy woman, "Please, please, tell me what I must do to have a child of my own." And the fairy woman took pity on her, and she told her, "You must take 2 pails and go to the fairy spring. Draw the water from the spring, bring it back here to your room and wash in it, both pails. Then put the pails under your bed and go to sleep. In the morning, you will find that 2 flowers, one beautiful and one hideous, will have grown in the pails. You must eat the beautiful flower, and in time, you will have a child as beautiful as that flower." The queen did immediately what the woman told her to do. She took 2 pails and she went to the fairy spring and drew the water and went home, washed in it, put the pails under her bed, and fell asleep. And the next morning, just as the fairy woman had said, 2 flowers had indeed grown. One was as golden as the sun, and one was as velvety black as the night sky. But the problem is the queen couldn't decide which flower was supposed to be beautiful and which was supposed to be hideous. They were both beautiful to her, so she ate both flowers. Time passed, and just as the fairy woman said, the queen did bear a child. 2, in fact. She had twin daughters, one with hair as golden as the sun, and one with hair as dark as the night sky. And the 2 girls were just as alike as night and day, too. But no 2 sisters could have loved each other more than those 2 princesses. The golden-haired child was called Carolyn, after the queen's own mother. And the dark-haired child was called Tatterhood, because she never combed her hair, and she always wore a tattered hood over her wild mass of black curls. In addition to the tattered hood and the raggedy clothes, she rode an old goat and carried a wooden spoon and howled around the countryside playing at being a knight. While Carolyn wore the finest silks, which she hand-embroidered herself, and painted pictures, and wrote poems, and read great works of literature, and debated philosophy with the greatest minds in the land. Tatterhood rode her goat around the country, climbed every tree, and spoke with every animal. She knew those woods as well as Carolyn knew the palace. And so, time passed, and the girls grew up, and they grew closer and closer, and eventually, suitors started coming to ask for Carolyn's hand in marriage. Nobody courted Tatterhood, but that was just how Tatterhood liked it. She thought it was just fine if Carolyn liked this boy or that, and eventually wanted to be married. But Tatterhood just wanted to be a knight, and so she rode that goat around the countryside, brandishing her wooden spoon, wearing her tattered hood and her raggedy clothes, and one day she came home to the palace and found the staff in an uproar, and her mother inconsolable, just weeping. And she cried out, "Mother, what happened?" And her mother told her, "The trolls have stolen your sister, and I know they're going to eat her. What do I do?" Well, Tatterhood jumped on the back of her goat and grabbed her wooden spoon and made ready to ride, but the queen grabbed her off that goat and said, "Oh, no, you don't. I can't lose you both." Took a while, many hours in fact, but eventually Tatterhood convinced the queen that she was the one to go rescue her sister. And so the queen gave her a boat, because sailing down the fairy river would be much faster than riding a goat. So Tatterhood took her wooden spoon and her goat. She boarded that boat and took some provisions and rode on down the fairy river until she came to the village of the trolls. And there she got out. She got on her goat and she rode as quietly as the goat could clip-clop across the cobblestone streets to the palace of the fairy king, or the troll king. She peeked in the window, and sure enough, she saw those trolls dancing around her sister, who was all trussed up and ready to go in the pot for dinner. Well, with a howl, Tatterhood leaped inside that window, and she beat every single troll with her wooden spoon until they fell asleep. She grabbed her sister, put her on the goat, and they rode as fast as they could back to the boat. Now, unfortunately, they could not sail against the fairy current to go home. So instead, they escaped by sailing down the fairy river. And so it went for many months, until at last they were almost out of provisions. They came to a village where the boat stopped. Tatterhood and her goat had been cooped up on that boat for a very long time, and they just needed to burn off some steam. So Tatterhood told her sister, "You wait here." She took her goat and her wooden spoon, and she rode around and around and around in a circle as fast as she could, just burning off that extra energy. The king of the village happened to be watching out of his window, and he saw this strange girl with a wooden spoon riding a goat around and around in a circle and wearing raggedy clothes and a tattered hood. So he sent his messenger to ask her, "Why do you ride that goat? Why do you carry a wooden spoon? And why do you wear that tattered hood and raggedy clothes?" Well, Tatterhood said, "I'll answer the king myself." So she got Carolyn, got on her goat, and they rode with the messenger back to the palace. The king asked her his questions again. And so Tatterhood looked at the king and she said, "When the time is right, if you ask me those questions again, I will answer." Well, the king decided to wait around, and meanwhile he became quite smitten with Carolyn. So he asked Tatterhood for her sister's hand in marriage. Tatterhood said, "That's ridiculous. You've only just met. Spend some time getting to know each other. Then, if you still want to get married and you like each other, then I'll say yes." So the king did just that. He spent some time with Carolyn. They decided they didn't really hit it off well enough to get married. But Carolyn and the king's son sure did. They loved all the same things. They loved painting and reading and beautiful things. And so time passed, and the king asked Tatterhood for Carolyn's hand in marriage for his son. Tatterhood agreed on one condition. She told the king, "I will let Carolyn marry your son if you make me one of your knights, so that I may always remain close to my sister." The king happily agreed to that and sent for the girl's mother to come for the wedding. At last the day arrived, and Tatterhood rode in the procession on her goat next to the king. They rode on in silence for some time, and then Tatterhood looked over at the king and grinned and said, "You had some questions to ask me, and if you want to ask them again, now is the right time, and I will answer them." So the king looked at Tatterhood and asked her, "Why do you ride that goat?" Tatterhood said, "Goat? This is the finest black war steed in the land, if you'd only open your eyes to see." And so the king did. And sure enough, it was a beautiful black war steed with a flowing mane and tail. The king looked at her and said, "Well, why do you carry that wooden spoon?" And Tatterhood said, "It's not a wooden spoon. This is a blade of the finest steel with a solid gold hilt, if you'd only open your eyes to see." So the king did, and sure enough, it was the finest blade of steel, just like Tatterhood said. So finally the king asked her, "Well, why do you wear those raggedy clothes and that tattered hood over your hair? And on the day of your sister's wedding, could you not comb your hair?" Tatterhood looked at the king one more time and grinned. "Ha! Raggedy clothes and tattered hood, I like that. Fine thing to say about my armor." Well, the king looked again, and sure enough, Tatterhood was wearing the finest fairy-wrought armor, which glowed rosily in the sun. It was finer than his own, and her beautiful black curls flowed down her back. Not a sign of a tattered hood anywhere. So the king looked at her and smiled, and he said, "My knight, I believe we must find a new name for you." And that is just what they did. But that is a story for another day. Thank you for listening.